Hi, everyone. Good evening. Carl Steinbeck here. We have the 23rd day of trial of Commonwealth, Massachusetts versus Karen Reed. And today the government finally rested after 23 days. They have not established the elements of any of the three charges they have against Karen Reed. And I was not able to get through all the way last night. As to yesterday's hearing, there was still like at least close to 2 more hours to go through. So what I'm going to do, rather than rehash that from yesterday, I'm going to go ahead and just cover today, and then we can circle that back maybe later tonight and capture some of that as well. So the day started out with the arguments and the ruling regarding the voir dire of Dr. Welcher yesterday, which is how they ended the day, and the judge gave a ruling today on it. So anyway, it's one of these deals. Let's listen to it here. It's pretty outlandish, but typical, par for the course for a judge that's just either incompetent or just up to her eyeballs with bias and prejudice and hatred of Karen Reed. So let's go ahead, listen to this here.
So I disagree with you, Mr. Alessi. I'm not allowing in the line of questioning regarding Trooper Paul, and I'm not allowing the line of questioning regarding Dr. Scorti-Bello. So that's my ruling. Let's bring the jury in.
That's the ruling. There's no findings. There's no rationale. She doesn't, I don't think she even knows the law unless she has some kind of buddy that's in the judicial system that can email her what to read off and type up. Some of her stuff is typed up, but there's like really a lack of knowledge of the law, and it's just sort of like she's just freewheeling. No, I don't like it because it hurts Brennan because the truth is going to come out. So I don't want to play the arguments. I mean, the arguments are just so insanely aggravating because think about it. This I'll just call him the Blue Man. Dr. Blue Man is sitting there relying on stuff and says he looks at the whole file, but then the defense can't cross-examine on everything he looked at to formulate his opinion. So the stuff about Trooper Paul and his theory and his findings are not allowed to be even discussed, even though some of that's part of his slides and part of his presentation is stuff that was gleaned from Trooper Paul. And then also the medical examiner, Dr. Scorti-Bello, you can't talk about stuff that she had and in her findings and her testimony, and that's something that came out that he had reviewed the complete medical examiner's file. So you can't even touch that on cross-examination. This is so egregious of a violation of constitutional rights for Karen Reed. I don't even know what to say anymore. It's just like, why don't we just go straight to and order the jury to convict her? Because you don't want to have the truth come out. It's all one-sided. Just duct tape all the witnesses that could speak truth. There's stuff you can flesh out on cross-examination. Just cut them off on cross-examination. So remember what she said? She said she was going to allow a robust cross-examination on this Dr. Blue Man. And what's she doing? She's shutting it down. And some of the most important things to ask about is things that he should have looked at and should have considered for other theories. So he has no other theory he looked at. The only thing he looked at is what can I do to support Hank Brennan's theory? That's the only thing he looked at. So I'm just looking at this case. It's not even good for your health if you have any knowledge of the law and the Constitution, because it's so absolutely beyond belief as to how this can be happening in a court of law where they have the law books behind a judge. They have a bench that the judge sits at. They have a black robe that the judge wears. They have a court reporter there. They cite law and they give jury instructions, but it's all about keeping out the truth. So is this jury going to wake up and be able to see enough of the truth to understand this is part of the cover-up of whodunit? That's why they're doing this. They know Karen Reed doesn't have the proof to show she did it. They cannot prove it. And because they can't prove it, they got to play keep away of the truth from the jury. So I hope and trust that this jury sees it for what it is, which is all their witnesses for the most part, minus a few ones that are innocuous. Um, all of their main fact witnesses, they just completely have botched this case. It's an absolute farce, a joke. I can't even come up with enough words to describe how sad of a situation this is for any American to sit through this kind of a sham process. So anyway, they don't care. They don't care what fools they're making out of themselves. It's really like the place has gone absolutely mad. They've gone bonkers up there. And so let's go ahead. That's all I'm going to say for it right now. I mean, if you guys have seen any of this today, it's I just trust that these folks are wanting to find out what these objections are all about. Maybe they're catching uh, streams later on, live streams later, and finding out what was the ball being hit on. And think how many sidebars she has when the jury's not present. It's all to keep us, the public, from seeing how low down and dirty and nasty this whole violation of due process is. The due process clause of the Constitution, the Fifth Amendment, it doesn't exist in this court. And this is an absolute abomination. And it's absolutely something that I wish I almost didn't ever know about this case, because it's that disturbing to see on so many levels. So I'm just trusting that the truth is going to get a hold of the jury somehow, some way. There's still rampant truth out there that they've not been able to keep out. They've not been able to deny from the jury what quacks and goons and liars have had presented on this witness stand here, the jury box. And so if they've checked out and they don't have critical thinking skills, then there's no hope for anybody up there, and you all better flee that state is all I can say. Um yeah, so um let's I'll just call you MG. Someone explain how the taillight can scratch John, then explode. I mean, he did not even go into any of that. He just says, "Oh yeah, it bumped me at 2 miles an hour." Yeah, I see some scratches. They're like surgical type scratches, all in the same direction. That's not coming from bumping against the car. And what happened to the taillight? He's not able to describe that. He's not even trying to describe it. He doesn't know the location of the vehicles. He doesn't know the location of John. It's all just, what can I do to support Brennan's theory that, hey, the car backed into John? That's the only thing he can come up with. There's nothing scientific. There's nothing engineering related. He just becomes a blue blob and thinks that he can impress the jury with this stuff. I just think any accident reconstructionist worth their weight would be like us and just absolutely think this is so laughably stupid and insanely non-scientific. It's just really juvenile. So Robert Hickey, for some reason, her rulings come off as vindictive and arbitrary. No, they're arbitrary to not follow the law to do justice to Karen. So yeah, everything's vindictive. Everything's, what's a maximum we can do to help gather a conviction here? Thank you for your nice comments. Yeah, I mean it's at least, like I say, the best thing about this, all this trampling of the Constitution, is that you all see it front center. What happens when you appoint judges based on political connections that have no business being on the bench. She should have never been a judge. Can you imagine her defending people as a public defender? If you're really a public defender that takes the Constitution to heart, you would never condone this kind of circus going on here. I would say if you have anybody watching this and if they don't get ticked off, angry, mad, they should never be a prosecutor or a defense attorney. Okay. Anybody going through law school, you think you want to be a prosecutor, defense attorney, look at what you got to put up with. And this is the worst of the worst here. But if this doesn't disgust you and outrage you and inflame your passions to fight this kind of stuff, then you shouldn't be representing anybody in a court of law. So I just got to sit back and say, you know what, the jury gets it. They see all the hiding the ball, and they're not stupid. Anyway, let's go ahead and go back to the rest of this joke of a so-called court.
Well, come over here because they're on their way.
Yeah, just keep everything from the public. All the little corruption games going on. It's not public because they would see, everyone would see how biased she is when the jury's not there.
The Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Court is now open. You may be seated.
Yeah. Hear ye, hear ye. This is a absolute sham court. You won't get justice here. It's all theatrics.
I do have to ask you those 3
Law doesn't
questions.
apply.
Are you all able to follow the instructions and refrain from
Vindictive
discussing
rage.
this with anyone since we left yesterday? Everyone said yes. So
And
Are
retribution
you also able to
without
follow
following the
instructions
law.
and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into this case? Everyone said yes.
Yeah,
or no?
just keep the serfs there, the little minion serfs on the jury. Keep them in the dark. Hide the ball from them. Let them know that you just got to keep your nose to the grindstone. We're going to tell you and spoon feed you what we think you should know and hide the truth.
Did anyone happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case since we left yesterday?
Did anybody hear any of the truth? Because you're not going to see it in this courtroom.
No. Everyone said no. Thank you. Could we have
No.
Dr. Welch
If they
back?
did, they don't want
Mr.
to
Leslie,
get thrown out.
podium.
With the computer and any electronics there, so we don't have to address it.
It doesn't look like it's turned on at
Oh,
all.
okay, good. And smart watches.
So this one.
Just think, like I say, they have to keep the truth out because this is part of the cover up. If they had a normal trial and Karen Reed and her attorneys got to present normal cross-examination, normal witnesses, this thing would be guaranteed slam dunk, open and shut case. But they're trying to hide the truth, blindfold the jury members from seeing what really is going on here. So when they're going to this extreme to hide things, you know that the attorney and the judge, the prosecutor and the judge know that they got a loser of a case. They cannot win this case. So they got to stack the deck and throw out the Constitution to do it.
Sir, I'll remind you, you're still under oath.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Honor.
And Dr. Welch, we're going to ask you to not turn on your computer yet.
Okey-dokey.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, if I could, smartwatches that are receiving text messages during his direct, if we can make sure that that does not occur.
None of this, Michael L.
Get my email.
Okay, or just
I mean, this guy is so bad. I never thought a guy could be this bad as a so-called PhD accident reconstructionist and biomedical engineer.
don't look at your watch.
Look at that case I put out yesterday and how people were able to bounce him out of the courtroom from testifying in a civil case. Yeah, he was a hot mess in there, completely discredited just on his own paper and his conclusions. He never even got to testify. He never even got to do a voir dire on it. He was that much of a joke in that civil case in Massachusetts a few years ago.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning, Dr. Welcher.
Good morning.
Do you know whether there was glass found on the bumper of Miss Reed's Lexus SUV?
My understanding there was, yes.
Did you reach a conclusion on whether the glass on the bumper came from the drinking glass that you assert Mr. O'Keefe was holding at the time of the alleged impact?
I didn't have an opportunity to inspect the glass, but the glass was broken and there was glass on the bumper. That's all I know.
So you, as you sit here today, you have no basis to conclude that the glass on the bumper came from the glass that you depict as having been held by Mr. O'Keefe at the time of the alleged impact. Is that correct?
Well, you're mixing a couple things.
No, Dr. Welcher,
So
if you can just answer my question.
I'm
If
trying
I
to.
need to rephrase it, I will.
Um,
I'll ask it a different way.
please.
You have no basis as you sit here today to conclude that the glass on the bumper came from a drinking glass connected to Mr. O'Keefe, do you?
Well, we have a picture of a broken glass at the scene. So I wouldn't say we have no basis. We don't necessarily have enough to conclude it's from it, though.
When you have pieces that don't even match the type of glass, you have like 5 pieces that don't even match the type of glass that they found at the scene. So where did that glass come from? How many people have glass riding on the top of their back bumper?
Do you
It looks more like a setup, a framing.
you had depictions in your test with Mr. O'Keefe holding a glass, correct?
Correct.
My question is, you have no evidence to show at all other than, and I'm talking evidence, testing information. You're saying you have no evidence that shows that the glass on the bumper is not the same glass as you showed on your slides as being found supposedly at the scene. You have no test evidence that that's the same glass, do you?
So again, the one I have at my testing obviously was not the same glass. We have pictures of a broken bar glass in the snow near where Mr. O'Keefe's body was. We have glass fragments on the rear of the bumper. That's the extent of my knowledge on the correlation between those two.
So do you said you reviewed the reports and testimonies of various Commonwealth representatives, correct? That's in your report.
Correct. In the initial.
Right, correct. And some of those reports included forensic scientists who work for the Massachusetts State Police, correct?
I believe that's correct.
And you put those in your report as documents that you reviewed, correct?
Correct.
And as you sit here today, it's your testimony. You don't know whether in any of the reports of the Massachusetts State Police, there is an answer to the question of whether there's any connection at all between the glass found in the snow and the glass on the bumper.
I recall it being inconclusive.
Oh, so you recall that the testing was inconclusive?
I don't remember what testing they did, but for example, when they put the taillight fragments back together, they were able to deduce that the fragments were from the taillight. I don't think they attempted to do that with the glass.
Assume that there has been testing of the glass on the bumper, and assume that that testing conclusively determines that the glass on the bumper is not the glass that was found in the snow.
Okay.
Assume that.
Okay.
How would that affect your analysis?
I'd want to know where the glass came from, but we still have a whole bunch of other elements. So I don't think it would affect the end results.
So
Nothing can remove him off his original one and only hypothesis, which is she did it. I just got to put some blue paint on and bump myself up against the corner of the car and say that these injuries are consistent with just a Lexus, no other car, but just a Lexus, right? The LX 570.
Would it have any part in your analysis with my assumption that the glass on the bumper is not the glass that's associated with the broken glass that was supposedly found in the snow?
Yes, I mean, we always want to have as much answers or as many answers as possible. So I would want to know if we could figure out where it came from.
And wouldn't the fact, assuming that the test results show there's no connection, meaning the glass on the bumper is different from the glass in the snow, wouldn't that be contrary to your theory of what happened in some way?
It depends on when the glass was actually broken. The glass was in his hand, at least that's the testimonial evidence I have seen. So it depends on whether it's broken from contact with the rear of the vehicle or broken with contact on the ground.
Assume that the glass on the bumper is not the glass that was found in the snowbank. Doesn't that
It looks like it was planted on the car at the Sallyport at Canton Police Department then. Can this guy comprehend that?
at least in part contradict your hypothesis as to whether there was contact by the Lexus with Mr. O'Keefe at 34 Fairview?
So if you recall all my slides, nowhere did we discuss that in my slides. So no, it wouldn't contradict it. I would want to know where that glass came from.
But you didn't seek that information, did you, sir, in your analysis to determine where the glass came from?
Well, of course I did. I read the reports about it.
But you sit here and you say you don't know the answer. There's steps you could have taken to get that answer quite easily. Couldn't you have, sir?
Not me. That's a material science expert.
You've been communicating with Lieutenant Tully, haven't you?
Correct.
You couldn't have asked Lieutenant Tully that question?
To my knowledge, he's not a material science expert.
But could he have told you the result of testing on that glass?
Norton cancellation. It doesn't matter. Once somebody's acquitted, even if there's jury misconduct, it's game over. You don't retry somebody. Double jeopardy attaches.
Glass on the bumper and whether it was any way associated with the glass found in the snow? Wouldn't that have been an easy question to ask him? Just has there been testing, and if so, what's the results?
Yes, but my knowledge from reading the reports was it was inconclusive.
But you didn't read all of the reports, did you, sir?
Apparently not.
Let's turn to another topic, laser scans. Part of your analysis involved conducting laser scans of portions of 1 Meadows Avenue, the house of Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Correct.
Those laser scans were used, at least in part, to answer the question of whether the collision between Miss Reed's SUV and Mr. O'Keefe's Chevy Traverse at 1 Meadows at approximately 5:07 a.m. on January 29, 2022, caused the right rear taillight of the Lexus to break, correct?
Correct.
And in that analysis, inches literally matter, correct?
You want to get it as accurate as possible.
And the reason why inches matter is because, and we're going to get to this, you try, and you did it in your slide presentation on direct, you tried to see whether the Lexus lined up with the Traverse such that there could be a break of the taillight. That was part of your analysis, correct?
So the main part of the photogrammetry was to determine the speeds and the angles and the degree of overlap on the vehicles. And then we also looked at the damage from the video, or actually it's just where the snow was knocked off the rear of the Chevy Traverse, and document the height of that.
You said the main part. I don't want to engage in semantics. I want to go to my question of, isn't part of the laser scan analysis to determine whether or not those two vehicles align sufficiently such that the Lexus could break, the taillight of the Lexus could break coming into contact with the Chevy Traverse? Wasn't that part of your analysis, at least in part?
Yes.
Okay. And in that analysis, inches literally matter, correct?
It can, depending on which way you're going inches.
So the Ring camera at One Meadows, you're familiar with that Ring camera, right? At
Correct.
One Meadows? That Ring camera at One Meadows was used as part of the laser scan process that you and your firm Aperture performed at One Meadows on October 2nd, 2024. Do I have the date correct?
I believe so, but like the videos were not literally used during the laser scans. We took the laser scans, the video, combined them together in a process called photogrammetry.
Okay, let's get this down to the fundamentals. You used, and that was my question, Your Honor, if we could publish the exhibit with regard to the Ring camera.
Sure. What exhibit is it?
Yeah, I've got my, yeah. Dr. Welcher, you recognize that Ring camera as being at One Meadows. You discussed it, as a matter of fact, on your direct testimony, correct?
Yes.
Now, that Ring camera was utilized as part of your laser scan process, correct? It was used.
So you're confusing laser scan and photogrammetry. The video, the laser scanners are together used in the photogrammetry. The camera and the laser scans are not used necessarily with each other.
Was that Ring camera used for any part of your work?
Absolutely, the photogrammetry.
I just need to be able to finish my question, sir. Was
Oh,
that
sorry.
Ring camera used for any part of your work at One Meadows on October 2nd, 2024?
Yes.
And it was used for what purpose?
In the photogrammetric process, to establish the position and dimensions of various things in the video. So then we could go back and overlay the vehicles and track the tracks in the snow, as well as look at the damage to the vehicles.
Right. So this was used to, as a basis, not the only one, to establish dimensions of the other work that was done in analysis at One Meadows, correct?
Correct.
You can take that down, Mr. Woke. You know that the Ring camera at One Meadows, in existence when Aperture did the work on October 2nd, 2024, was different than the Ring camera that was in existence on January 29th of 2022, the date where you went through to see if those two vehicles align. Is that correct? The cameras are different.
That is correct.
And you know that the cameras are different, and you knew that as part of your analysis, correct?
Correct.
Different cameras in a different location. How can you use that for comparison and try to say exactly where these two vehicles made the impact with each other?
Did you document the differences between the two cameras as part of any work performed at One Meadows?
Yes.
And did you measure any differences there might have been between the location of the new Ring camera from the older one that was in existence on January 29th of 2022?
No, what we did is use the current Ring camera in conjunction with the old Ring camera and with the laser.
Yeah, you cannot argue that the judges hamstrung you and blocked a lot of the truth from coming out. You can't do that. But what I've done many times is point out how the opposing counsel is objecting all the time, and the times that they are, whether they are sustained or not, it just shows that they got something to hide. That's what I've argued every single time. So I've not been blocked from doing that before.
Your scans were able to, again, map the points onto the scene. That's why I showed you the report from the photogrammetry software that reported our error.
Sir, my question was just measurement, not your process.
Oh.
Did you measure the difference
I don't believe so.
between where the old camera was and where the new camera was?
He can't explain everything except he just bumps into the back of this 2-mile-an-hour SUV and says, "Oh yeah, that's how all the injuries happen." Explains everything. He just fell backwards, fell on his head, hard surface, and he's using stuff that's not even admissible, stuff like cadaver to support his testimony. So this is really, really a tragedy here to think this can go on in a court of law.
No, it was angled slightly more to the right, though.
How would you know that if you were not retained on January 29th of 2022? How would you know where the original angles were?
Because when you look at the first camera, the one on January 22nd, it's here. The new one is slightly over to the right.
That's an eyeball approximation analysis. That's not a measurement, correct?
Well, I don't know that we actually measured it, but we accounted for it and corrected for it. But you can see, for example, what the original one shows, for example, to the left-hand side, compared to what the new one shows to the left-hand side, and it's angled more to the right.
Sir, you have experience with Ring cameras, correct?
I do.
And I think a lot of members of the public have experience with Ring cameras. You can move just the camera portion ever so slightly and change significantly the angle of the camera. Can't you, what it captures? Just a small turn.
Potentially.
Right. Even a millimeter turn can make a change. A 2 millimeter, a 1 inch can make a significant change with regard to what the camera captures, correct?
Could, sure.
So, did you measure whether the newer camera that was present on October 2nd, 2024 was installed to the left? And I'm talking measure. To the right, to the top, or the bottom relative to the camera that was there on January 29th of 2022.
He doesn't explain really anything at all. It's just no engineering specifics he can bring up. It's really like a 5th grade type joke of an experiment.
So we solved for the camera
I'm
position.
asking if you measured, sir.
Oh, no, we didn't measure.
So let's talk about some other differences with regard to cameras and Ring cameras. Different Ring cameras can have different levels of distortion, correct?
Potentially.
Cameras, well, are you saying that all Ring cameras have the same level of distortion?
No, but again, they're mass produced. So you could have some that have the same exact distortion. You could have some that have different.
Doesn't.
And you don't know the comparative distortion between what I'm just going to now refer to as the old Ring camera that was there January 29, 2022, and the camera that you saw on October 2024, which I'll refer to the new camera. You don't know the difference in the distortion between those cameras as you sit here today, do you?
So we know enough information that if the distortions had been different, our errors would have been too high. And so the fact that our errors are within acceptable, or what's called an RMS error, we know that the distortions are similar enough to give us accurate measurements.
Sir, that is speculation. That
It's
is
not.
not data. That is not a measurement. You didn't measure the distortion, sir, did you? If the cameras, you didn't have the old.
He didn't measure anything. He didn't get out there and measure anything. They don't know exactly where John was at, the exact position. They don't know where the car went. They don't know how the supposed plastic polycarb pieces of the back taillight made each and every of the lines, the gouges in his arm and John O'Keefe's arm. He should have to explain every single cut that was in a perfect angle, perpendicular angle to his arm. So he can't do any of that. And it's really no science at all. It's just absolute quackery.
Camera to do it.
We didn't, but we had images from the old camera. And then when we get images from the new camera and solve those.
Did you look at Jen McCabe's testimony? It said each time she sent a text message, she's looking out the window and saw that, Karen was still there directly outside at 12:45.
Camera properties and then overlay data from the old images to the new images with the point clouds. If that distortion is too great, we will have too high of errors in our project, which is why I showed the error report from the photogrammetry process to show that we have.
They don't mention it. Didn't come out on direct with this guy at all. They just want, that's another thing they're trying to hide the ball on, Stephen Weishaupt.
Checked for that and documented that our errors are an acceptable range.
Yeah, going that fast, 24 miles an hour. He's never explained how Karen's car, if you try to brake, it's going to slide in that icy, snowy, slick surface and then crash into Higgins' Jeep. He never talks about the stopping distance. He can't replicate any of this stuff. What did he do in California to replicate the scene with all that snowy ice that was like close to an inch when she left?
So that we have confidence in our results.
You do not have information from the manufacturer of Ring. You didn't present it and you don't have it as to what is the acceptable level of distortion for the analysis that you did. Do you, sir?
The
You have that from Ring.
I don't have it for Ring, but I
Thank
don't need
you.
it from Ring.
So now let's go to, if cameras have different levels of distortion, that would change the analysis in reconciling the difference between their angles. That's a pretty straightforward proposition, sir. Wouldn't it?
So it depends on how much difference it is, but we have accounted for that.
With which model of the Ring camera was present at One Meadows on January 29th, 2022? Which model?
I don't know. I'd have to go look through the data.
Do you believe I'm not going to take up the time to have you look, but do you really believe you've got the model of the Ring camera that was in existence on January 29th of 2022?
I don't know. I
You
need to
didn't
look
present
through
it
the
in your direct testimony, did you, sir?
I did not.
So do you have the model of the Ring camera that was present at One Meadows on October 2nd, 2024?
No.
So you don't have even the model for either one of them?
I'm not going to talk about it a third time. I'm just not going to have any faith that this is not going to be a full acquittal across the board. Anything but that. This thing should not be a hung jury. For sure, she's not going to be convicted of anything, in my opinion. And in the worst case scenario, it'd be a hung jury, but I don't even know how they can get to that with this absolute disaster of a case. Day after day after day, they have witnesses that just cannot shoot straight and tell the straight story. And, this blue man here making himself out to be the only one that can solve the crime of whodunit. Get real.
Nope. But we have videos from both of them and scans of the scene.
So now let's talk about another aspect of Ring cameras. They have mechanisms, as I was talking about earlier, that allow the user to adjust the camera angle, correct?
Correct.
And do you know whether there was a difference in the camera angle between the two cameras?
Yes, as we already discussed, there was a slight difference in the
But
angle.
you don't have a measurement of that, right, sir?
Correct.
Okay.
But we accounted for it.
So wouldn't a difference in models of Ring cameras be relevant at all to your analysis of trying to reconcile any differences between them?
So if you have.
All right, Christopher Smith. Yeah, there is no reason it should have been blocked. It's a violation of the constitutional right to cross-examine a witness that the prosecution has. So it's an absolute travesty. And but it's just like keeping out Easter and blocking a lot of. There's so many truths that are kept out day after day after day. I mean, you can't even stop to really add them all up. It's just an ongoing disaster here. Like I say, the Constitution doesn't apply here in this courtroom.
Video from both of them, and you have laser scans with three-dimensional geometry of the scene. You can go in, and it's called a reverse camera analysis, and solve for the distortion properties. The scans give you the real world dimensions. So once you know the real world dimensions, you can then go in, man, you can go in and then solve for the camera lens properties based upon the real world distortions. So for example, if there's a little bit of bending at the end, the laser scan data will show that, and you can correct for that, knowing information about the laser scanner.
I'll ask
the
the
laser
question.
scan data.
I'm sorry, I thought you finished, sir. I'm going to ask the question again because it's a narrow question. Wouldn't knowing the difference in the models be relevant? That's all I'm asking. Wouldn't it be relevant to your analysis of reconciling the differences to them? Wouldn't
No.
it be relevant?
No.
So you think the different models are irrelevant to any process you occasioned at one? It's irrelevant.
So the analysis of the video itself is more important than the models?
I'm not asking if it's more important. I'm just asking, would it be relevant?
No, I don't believe it'd be relevant.
Now let's go to another aspect of the cameras. Are key parameters in a camera that the software needs to know focal length?
It is.
Is imaging size something that is an important parameter in a camera?
Yes.
Is our sampling characteristics an important parameter in cameras?
Can be.
Is the principal point, you understand that concept, sir? Is that an important parameter in a camera?
Define how you're using principal point.
Sure. A principal point of an image is the point where a camera's direct line of sight, called, as you may know, the optical axis, intersects the image plane. Does that
Gotcha,
sound
yes.
familiar?
Mhm.
So isn't that the image's mathematical center, the principal point?
More or less, yes.
And for high accuracy photogrammetric work, it's important to know if the lens is mounted centered over the image sensor due to the small manufacturing variances, correct?
Could be important.
And if the principal point is the center of the image.
Okay.
That's relevant. So doesn't that affect the mathematical calculation of the light ray geometry?
It could.
So the variance in manufacturing between cameras is a known issue. Do you agree?
I do.
There's small manufacturing variances that affect one of the key components of the fundamental parameters of the camera, namely the principal point, right?
Correct.
Okay, some commentators said Welcher was a professional witness who did damage. Yeah, he did damage to himself and aperture. You think he continued the prosecutions? I think he got cut off there, but is he trying to say bad stuff about Karen Reed and tying her to a vehicle strike on John O'Keefe? Of course he's doing that, but when you pick apart what he's saying, it doesn't make any sense. And he's tried to do that stupid Blue Man demo, has no correlation whatsoever. And he did not look at other theories of what might have happened. For example, a dog attack, a punch in the face, and he falls back, hits his head somewhere on concrete or back of a wall or a basement wall or something like that.
Did you perform the camera calibration of the camera in place in October of 2024?
Yes. So within photogrammetry, we calibrated the photogrammetric analysis to the camera.
Did you address the principal point in that calibration? Do you have documentation that you addressed that important factor, the principal point?
So the checking of the RMS error in the software takes into account sums up all the potential errors in the measurements, which would include that.
Sir, you know the importance of all of these topics because the output of all the work Aperture did at One Meadows, almost all of it, springs from that camera, correct?
It starts there.
Okay, it starts there. And if the starting point is wrong, then where you go from the starting point is going to be at least potentially wrong, correct?
Potentially.
Would you agree that
The most you'll say is potentially.
Ring cameras have a swiveling mechanism so that the user can adjust the camera angle?
Some do.
Do you know whether the camera that was in existence on January 29, 2022 had a swiveling mechanism?
I believe it did.
Believe, do you know?
I do not know for a fact, but
you-
those style of Ring cameras on the surveillance have adjustability that includes angle.
But you don't know whether the camera that was there, the specific camera on January 29, 2022, had a swiveling mechanism or not, correct?
Correct.
And do you know whether the camera that you saw in October of 2024 had a swiveling mechanism on it?
It did.
And where did you document the fact that it had a swiveling mechanism?
I think we have photos of the camera.
Did you document it in writing, and did you document the tolerance of the swiveling mechanism?
No.
Let's go to, and again, all of the camera, this camera that you used is the starting point for your laser scan and photogrammetry process, correct?
Correct.
All right. Let's go to another topic.
Yep. I think it's trying to keep away from Alessi, try to look like he's smarter than Alessi, and try to make Alessi be frustrated. And what he's doing is just coming across as a arrogant know-it-all, and I'll just leave it at that. But a jury should not like him. If they don't like him, they don't want to listen to him.
On your direct testimony, as I recall, you stated essentially from various information that you lined up in the video, and we're talking about the lining up of the Lexus with the Traverse. And this is at One Meadows. And so, as I understand what you did, sir, is you took what are called point clouds, 3D images, created them for the Lexus. You took created 3D images, synonym point clouds of the Traverse, and then you attempted to line them up to determine, among other things, whether they would align sufficient so that the Lexus could line up and potentially hit the Traverse such that the tail light of the Lexus could be broken. Was that at least part of your analysis?
That was part. There was more.
So you showed a slide, a few slides, and with your honor's permission, what I'd like to do.
Have you guys seen that Blue Man video advertising for Aperture on X? I don't know if it's on YouTube, but it was pretty hilarious. And then I saw another one that came out later today as well.
Is to start with slide 90.
All right. Do you have any problem with Dr. Welch keeping his printed copy that he was using?
I have no problem with the printed copy, Your Honor.
So, I'm sorry, what slide again?
90.
Yeah, the injuries do not align with that tail light. And he didn't explain it. He should have to go into detail, explain how every cut on John's arm is accounted for in which piece and how each piece would. He can't do that. He's just guessing. And I think it's even worse than that, because even if you guess, you would not make such a outlandish, crazy comment.
My printed copy tiny. Can I
Can
pull it
you
up?
see the?
Yes. Yeah.
No relation, but my brother's name
that
is John.
Slide that's part of your presentation depict a view from the top of the Lexus on the right and the Chevy Traverse on the left.
Correct?
And is that depicting contact between the two vehicles?
It is.
Now let's zero in a closer look, and that is a contact point. Am I correct?
Correct? I mean, there's multiple points. There's more than
Multiple
one.
points, but it shows.
No, I should have clarified that. No, they weren't. They're just making fun of this guy dressing up in a suit. So no, it wasn't real ads. They're making it look like an ad.
More clearly the contact
Correct.
between the two vehicles. Now, if we could the next, and that is number 91, Mr. Wolf. So Your Honor, 91. I think these are just going to go in order for a few, and I'll keep announcing them. So this is 91, same vehicles, just a different viewpoint. Is that correct, Dr. Welcher?
Correct. This and the next
I
slide.
just want to state.
Derby, you're saying I'm not laughing that much, 2 or 3 chuckles a week. I didn't know there's a chuckle counter here. And if you think I can be all fun and games, this is entertainment, and we can just all laugh and joke and see Karen Reed's constitutional rights be trampled on, and all this lie after lie after lie and spin and blocking of the truth coming out in this trial. Is this something we should chuckle about? Then I don't know what to tell you. I'm not here for chuckles, giggles, and all that kind of stuff. So you need to probably change the channel.
I know.
With this one, I
Hold
just
on a
asked the
second.
question, does it show the contact?
So go ahead and answer now.
This slide and all the other slides, we're trying to show the angle of contact, but because it's two-dimensional image, you're losing some perspective. For example, here you're seeing the chrome piece on Mr. O'Keefe's Chevrolet, which is on the right.
Supposedly you see all these bad images because they're making it 3D. They're doing this laser stuff and overlaying after overlaying, and they're trying to make it look like they're intersecting. And look, if it's 3D, this dimension, the depth of the dimension doesn't even look accurate. It really looks clownish. That does not look like a realistic image. That's what it's trying to do with these computer software apps or devices, whatever they have. It just doesn't do itself justice.
Right? You're seeing it obviously behind where the Lexus is. So we were trying to show it at a whole bunch of different angles to try and illustrate the degree of closeness or lack thereof.
What does this even show? You're supposed to be, I guess, facing Karen's house, and this is where they hit. And I guess there it does look like the back light hit her vehicle. So anyway,
Alrighty. So
if you have different camera angles and you're trying to do these overlays and all that, there's no way you can trust that as reliable.
Thank you.
is it correct that on your direct examination, you said in sum and substance, we looked at the degree of overlap, and there's only about a 2 to 3 millimeters of overlap between the vehicles? Is that what you recall saying on direct?
That is correct.
And that you stated that supposed 2 to 3 millimeters of overlap was insufficient to cause the taillight of the Lexus to contact the rear of the Chevrolet. You recall saying that?
That's correct.
Now, I would like you to look at that. This is from your slide presentation. Is that not showing contact between the two vehicles?
That's what I just
Oh, it
said.
absolutely is not. What you're seeing is a portion of the vehicle that is behind the area. Keep in mind the angle, the Lexus is angled off to the left. So the area that you see here is actually, in this case, in front of where the taillight is. This is why we tried showing it from a whole bunch of different angles, because when you try and take a two-dimensional image and look at it, you see stuff in the background. So and again, this is why in the computer, We overlaid them, looked at the measurements, in the computer where you don't have this, we have the three-dimensional measurements, and it does not hit.
Where did you show in your slide presentation what you just said, that it doesn't show in overlap?
So
Where?
it shows a contact. It definitely contacted, I'm sorry, Mr. Reporter, down below here. It does not show a contact here. So to answer your question, all the next slides were our attempt to do that. So all the next slides is your answer.
We're going to go to those next slides. So you're, just to be clear, you're saying that that depiction does not show any contact between the taillight of the Lexus and the Chevy Traverse.
So the upper taillight, just to be clear, because the lower taillight is much closer.
Well, it's not only much closer, it's in contact.
Yes, Lexi Maxwell. Unless he could object to certain things a witness does, but it's very rare that attorneys do that. Like if he's being non-responsive or being argumentative, you can ask the judge to direct the witness to answer it. Also, like if you're trying to get a yes or no answer out of them, sometimes judges will grant that request and admonish the witness to comply. I don't think I've ever done that, though.
Isn't it, sir?
It's very close. It's probably within an inch of being in contact.
Oh, so you state that even the lower part of the taillight is not making contact?
So if, again, maybe there's a photo we can show or a scan that is on the rear of the vehicle and it contacts on the corner, which is just around. So maybe like an inch or so in front of it on the corner.
I'm just going with what you presented in your slide
Well, let's
presentation.
go to the next slides and then
Sir,
maybe
I
we'll see
will
it.
determine which slides we go
Okay.
to on my questioning.
I'm just hoping
So
to
now-
answer.
Oh, thanks, Brandy. Yeah, actually, I need to turn off super chats because I tell people do not give money, but there's a way I can turn that off. I need to do that here. So I've been telling folks, don't give money to me. Just give it money to Karen Reed's Defense Fund.
Let's go to Mr. Wolf, the next slide
There we go.
in your presentation. My question is zeroing in. Are you saying that that slide does not show contact between the tail light of Ms. Reed's Lexus and any part of the Chevy Traverse?
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly what it shows. You can see a little better here. Again, we tried all these different angles, which is why all these slides are in there. But you can see some of the geometry of the light. This structure, and again, remember I said the Chevy kind of curves in as it goes up a little bit.
Let's go to the next slide.
I mean, that's so much overlap of the two vehicles. You think the whole back ends, corners would be crushed.
40, yes, please. Is it working? 41, Your Honor.
That's exhibit 41?
Well, that's true
No,
here.
Question, because that's not my slides.
So, Mr. Alessi, is this
Look at how far out that tail light is. It really juts out there.
exhibit number 41, or is this from the PowerPoint? Because,
Slide 41. Slide.
okay.
Yes.
So I'm putting this up because I want to show an actual photograph of that tail light. And I would like you, sir, to focus on the quarter panel tail light in each. Do you see a jutting out of the quarter panel tail light in that photo? You see it jut out?
So I don't know if you and I are talking the same thing. There are little fins here.
Correct. Now, what I'd like to do is to go back to the depiction we were just looking at. And that depiction doesn't show the jutting out, does it?
No, it does.
No, it
Those are
doesn't.
actually more on the side of the vehicle. You can't see them in this.
Look at that. It's got like a wavy effect that sticks out way further than what it's shown here. So looks like it's photoshopped.
This image.
Correct. You
But-
can't see them.
Hold on a second. I wasn't finished. But
Sir.
they are 100% there. We actually did special hand scans with a hand scanner of the taillight to put it back on to the vehicle.
You say they're 100% there, but you can't see it in that depiction, can you? The jutting out that you could see in the two-dimensional one we just saw. You can't see it.
I can't see who's behind that wall because it's being blocked by something. I can't see on the side of the taillight because it's on the side I can't see. It's being blocked.
He's saying that taillight, you compared this photo here to what we just saw Leslie show of the more of the back end of that LX 570. This is like there's a big, huge chunk of that right taillight completely missing here. What is this white thing that's sticking out on that's interfering with the red?
Sir, my question is
This doesn't look realistic at all.
simple. You cannot see the jutting out of the taillight in this depiction, can you?
Correct.
Okay, now let's go on to the next question in this topic. You could have easily solved what you consider to be the issues you had with trying to show it lining up, couldn't you, sir? You had an easy solution for that.
I took the best solution. I'm not sure what
You
you're referring
had
to.
3D images, correct?
I did.
You could have shown and measured 3D images to get almost the exact contact point and almost the exact dimensions if you had just used the 3D images that you had available to you. Isn't that correct?
That's exactly what we did. When I went through the video analysis, I showed you how we overlaid the point clouds, the 3D scans on top of each vehicle. So we took the, I'm sorry, we took
Sir,
the vehicles.
please don't interrupt.
Hold on.
Your
Hold
Honor,
on.
he keeps referencing my hand and saying I'm doing something when I'm not. And I think that's distracting to the jury.
So-
I'm not interrupting
Hold
him.
on.
Okay. So he's getting mad at Alessi, and Alessi's getting mad at this guy, trying to cut him off and accuse him of something. And then what's going to happen to the judge? She's going to take the side of the witness. We know it, right?
Let the witness answer the
I
question.
am. I'm just holding my hand like this, Your Honor. He keeps saying that I'm doing
Mr.
something.
Lessie, please.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Alessi,
ahead,
please. You're supposed to sit there and take it because we're not going to give you or your client any justice here. We got a tag team going on with the prosecution team, me and the as a judge, and this guy here. So it's us three against you, Alessi. So give it up. You're not going to win.
Finish the answer, Dr. Walker.
Again, in the photogrammetric analysis, I showed the video. I showed how we overlaid the point cloud on top of the video. That proves that.
I mean, this is like, talk about a theater of gaslighting, right? You have theaters in arts, you have theater of the absurd, theater of comedy, theater of tragedy. This is like theater of gaslighting to the extreme.
That the way we solved it, correct camera characteristics matches. Otherwise, that would be distorted. We overlaid the scans of the Lexus into the photogrammetric analysis. We overlaid the scans of the scene into the photogrammetric analysis. We overlaid all that stuff into the analysis. We did exactly what you're suggesting.
You could have easily addressed this issue by the following. If you really believe there was no contact or not sufficient contact, you could have produced a graphic that shows a gap between the two vehicles, a graphic, couldn't you? That's not a graphic.
What is that?
Sir, I get to ask the questions and you are to answer them subject to the judge's ruling. So my question is, couldn't you have created a graphic that would have better shown the issue that you are creating or talking about today? That's my question. Couldn't you have created a graphic?
We did. We created a whole bunch of graphics.
You called what we just saw a graphic?
Yes.
Well, if there's a gap, why isn't there then something that shows a clear gap?
Because when you have the angulation of the vehicles, you have perspective. When you're looking at it, even if you do a top down, you see everything projected onto a single flat plane. So you can't tell the height of things. So when you see things in this dimension, you can't necessarily see depth of things. So you lose in two-dimensional images, you lose one dimension depending on which way you're looking. That's why I showed it from all these different angles to try and show exactly what you're saying. We had
Yeah, and they all look different, and some of them look like they're actually smashed in. The corners should be smashed in.
graphics to do that.
3D images allow you to show perspectives for 360 degrees, correct? Is that correct?
That is correct.
So none of what you presented in your slideshow shows the contact points from 360 degrees, does it?
I don't understand your question. Are you asking if I showed it at every single, I went through 360 slides that showed it at every single degree?
Sir, let's move on. I think I've made the point.
So I'm going to strike the comment, Mr. Lewis.
Dr. Welcher, let's go to the next topic. And keep with these two depictions. Are these two images point clouds or 3D images? Are these two,
Those are one and the same thing. They're yes.
I would use them as synonym. Which term of the two do you want to use? Point cloud or 3D images?
Both are fine. It's a 3D image composed of points.
Okay, so let's just call them 3D images so we can do this more quickly. The Lexus and the Chevy Traverse that are depicted there are both 3D images of those vehicles, correct?
Correct.
And Aperture created the 3D images, correct?
Correct.
Sir, did you do these scans and did you personally create these images?
No, one of the assistants at Aperture did.
So you're speaking about what somebody else did at Aperture, correct?
They were doing it at my direction. And for example, the Lexus scan, I showed the photographs. You can see the gentleman that works at Aperture, Mike Morelli, was scanning them for me while I was doing the rest of the inspection. And then the hand scanning of the rear tail light was done by another engineer. I was out there with him doing it, taking measurements. And then same thing with the Chevy Traverse.
My question is, you didn't do the creation of these 3D images, did you?
The individual images, no.
All right, so let's go to these individual images. These are 3D images. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
Let's look at the taillight.
Okay.
That's not a 3D image. That's a Photoshop, isn't it?
Nope.
Oh, so it's your testimony that that taillight is a 3D image.
That absolutely is a 3D image. The way you can tell is when you get up near the chrome, because lasers don't like shiny objects, you start to get a scatter. So see all these dots here? If that was a photo, you wouldn't have these dots.
Let's go to the Chevy Traverse. Mr. Woke, zero in on the content. Yeah. There's grain on that taillight, in the taillight. That's a 3D image of a taillight, isn't it, sir?
They're both 3D images.
Well, I just want to stay with one. That taillight is a 3D image, and one of the ways you can tell is it's got all that grainy material on it, correct?
Correct.
Now let's go back, Mr. Woke, to the Lexus.
But compare that to the bumper on the Lexus, on the step portion.
Let's now go to the bumper.
But do you want me to explain the difference?
No,
Okay.
thank you. I would like to go to the bumper. Do you see any grainy, the predominance of any grainy image on the bumper?
There's a little bit. So for example, when you get near edges, it has a hard time with edges.
I'm
So
sorry,
you-
the bumper cover.
Right.
See the bumper cover up above?
This whole thing is
Kara Anderson, it's hard to ignore the jurors' live reactions while presenting what's like being watched so closely while you work. Well, I think for me, it's reassuring because I look at the jury as being the equalizer, because there's always some degree of politics in a courtroom with the judge as well. Nothing this bad have I ever seen, obviously, but and also the prosecutor, the politics. So if you got a judge you can't trust, a prosecutor can't trust, and you're defending somebody, then the jury is what I see as the equalizer, and I don't see a problem normally if you do a proper jury selection with the jury not doing the common sense thing you're asking them to do. So I think that what I see often is that attorneys just present their case and they don't pay any attention to the jury. They're never looking at them. They're never engaging with them at all when they're going through their line of questioning. It's like the jury isn't even there, and I think that that's something that attorneys are maybe afraid of having any kind of eye contact with them or anything. But I sort of think it's good to be engaging and not be afraid, like to look at them once in a while, or I glance at them if they're looking at a witness and I'm back at a podium, for example. I'm looking at them a lot. And basically, I look at myself as like a movie director, and I'm trying to make it engaging for the jurors. And I got to be respectful of their time, not waste their time, get right to the point, do the direct, very clean, proficient, and also do the cross-examination the same way. And anyway, I just think a jury is one of the greatest things about the Constitution, and so many countries don't even have this type of system, but we have a jury because we don't trust the government. That's why the founding fathers of this country set up the jury system for checks and balances. It's like we have checks and balances with the federal government, all the states. We have the legislative part of the wing. We also have the judicial, and then we also have the executive type branch. So those three are supposed to work and not together all the way, but they're supposed to help keep each other in check. And the reason for that being is that the founding fathers knew that power can corrupt people, and so that's why they realized if we only had whether elected or appointed judges deciding people's guilt, this is too much of an easy chance to have an innocent person convicted. So what they're doing is effectively neutralizing the jury, though, by keeping so much of the truth out. So that's what's very disturbing and upsetting to see.
is the bumper cover. That's the step pad. That's the rear body panel or the rear deck lid.
I'm talking about the step pad, sir. Just the step pad of the bumper?
Are you asking about just from here to here?
Correct. The bumper step
Can we
pad.
zoom in on it?
Pardon me?
Can we zoom in on it?
Sure.
Listen to the way he sounds snotty like that.
Here to here.
Correct. The bumper step
Can we
pad.
zoom in on it?
Pardon me?
Can we zoom in on it?
Sure.
Very arrogant and condescending to talk like that to an attorney.
Do you see any?
Yeah, I see graininess.
Let's go over to
Right in here. You can see it all through here. You see
It looks completely different than the taillights did on the two vehicles.
it through here.
Well, I'm talking about the step pad, not the entire bumper. I'm just talking about the step pad.
Right. So you're zooming in on the bumper.
Right.
The step pad is this structure up here.
We're going to move up. It just takes a while. So your testimony is that is a
Can you zoom in more?
that's you would like it zoomed in?
Yes, sir.
Sure. Your testimony is that that is a 3D image, not a Photoshopped step bumper cover. Is that correct?
So we have mapped the color over the 3D scans. We used 2 separate scanners. If you recall, when I got out to Miss Reed's vehicle, that taillight was gone. So we had to replace the taillight.
Talking about the bumper cover, not the taillight.
Okay, I'm explaining the process.
I'm just asking about the bumper cover, not the process.
So focus your answer on the bumper.
That is a laser scan.
Okay, so your
That's a 3D
testimony
model.
is the step part of the bumper cover is a 3D image from a laser scan, and it's not a Photoshop. That's your testimony.
Absolutely.
And you didn't perform the work for the 3D that you claim the bumper step up is. You didn't do that work to produce that depiction, did you, sir? Somebody else in your firm did it.
So this is all done at my direction. The engineers that work for me, so I'm telling them what to do.
But you didn't do it. Look how angry he's getting over this. Yet he's still leaning there, being propped up by the jury box.
I'm not the one punching the keys.
That's
I'm
my
saying,
question.
I need you to do this, and this. Use the hand scanner, go scan the light. I need to put this back in because it was missing when we got to it. So no, I'm not
So he doesn't have any oversight of the quality control of this process.
punching the keys.
Okay, so
Okay. Come on over, please.
Okay. Another sidebar. Apparently, objection by the prosecution. What do you know? All right, let's go. Jump ahead here.
that 3D images, is it correct? Regard to with regard to no, we don't need to back up, Mr. Wolf. Isn't it correct that 3D images allow for proper and most accurate measurements as opposed to 2D images? Is that a correct general statement?
I mean, generally, yeah.
Okay, that's my question. So let's go to the next topic. Let's talk about hydraulics on the Lexus SUV. What type of hydraulic system does the Lexus SUV have?
So it has a mechanism, I believe it's actually pneumatic. It's air-based system that raises it up and down.
Do you know what the name of that system is, sir?
No, not off the top of my
And he didn't bring this up on direct with Brennan either. How convenient.
head.
Do you know how it works
I do.
specifically?
Well, I mean, I know generally that there's a button on the interior where you can raise and lower the ride height.
And is that the extent of your knowledge of that system on the Lexus?
No, again, I know when you park it, it'll drop down the ride height. When you adjust it for different roadway conditions, it'll change the ride height.
Do you know what the height tolerances are? In other words, the lowest to the highest?
I believe it's around 1.25 inches. At one point in time, I measured it. I don't remember off the top of my head.
So you believe it's 1.25 inches up and 1.25 inches down? How do you apply the 1.25 inches?
I recall the total being like 1.25 inches, but I measured it at one point in time. I just don't remember off the top of my head.
Would you be surprised to hear that the tolerance is 5 inches on that vehicle?
I would be surprised. I don't recall it being that much, but I would need to double check.
Assume
Mhm.
that the manual as well as other informations support that the tolerance is 5 inches and that specifically the vehicle can be raised 3 inches high and it can be lowered 2 inches. That's the basis for the 5. What was the suspension height of Miss Reed's Lexus that you used for your accident reconstruction analysis
He has no idea.
out front at 34 Fairview between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. on January 29, 2022, to determine whether it was possible for the spoiler on the back of the Lexus to make contact with the eye of Mr. O'Keefe. If it was even possible, what did you use for a measurement
We
of the suspension?
matched the measurements from when the vehicle was tested, I believe on February 1st at the Canton Police Department.
What match did you make?
So we aligned the bottom of the taillight, actually the sheet metal right below the taillight. So we adjusted the height of the Lexus to match that.
Did you in any place document what level the Lexus was at the time of any testing, meaning the suspension? Did you document at all?
Yes.
Where?
Slide 107.
Can we have slide 107, Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, so when he was talking about standing there and showing how his height is like basically a half inch off of John O'Keefe's, John O'Keefe being 6'1", and this guy's 6'1.5". You know, we don't know where John was at. We don't know that what he was standing on. If this supposedly happened, where the vehicle strike is what causes his falling back, and so, and the injuries wouldn't be consistent anyway with that spoiler or that visor, whatever you want to call it, on the back, that fin type thing above the back window. So they don't have anything to go on for measurements that have any degree of exactness, and that's because they don't even know what position John's body was in. He's making it sound like John was standing straight up like this. He doesn't know that. It's all completely something he's doing to align with what the prosecution needs, because the more he aligns John being hit by this vehicle, the more likely he's going to be called to testify in court and then jack up the fees. He's going to make way more money if he has to testify as witness as opposed to him just doing a report and painting himself as Blue Man.
And then if you could zoom in on the lower photograph, the gentleman with the blue shirt.
Yeah. We don't know that.
Zoom in a little more,
All
please.
just made up conjecture.
So if I may, we matched the bottom of the sheet metal here to photographs when it was at the Canton Police Department.
Sir, my question is, where did you document whether the suspension was at 0, whether it was +3 or -2? Where did you document that?
Right here.
And what are the numbers of the documentation of that?
I don't know. We were matching the photos. So I don't care what the numbers are. I care that the height is the same.
Okay, so I just heard you say, if I heard correctly, you don't care what the...
We don't know anything. We didn't know where the plastic pieces are. He hasn't described how plastic pieces would have busted out, and then he didn't do any testing. How would these things bust out? That one guy on YouTube has better testing than this guy. BN Trouble 31 or something.
suspension is that? Is that your testimony?
No, I don't care what the suspension number is as long as the heights match.
I understand. I understand. So what was the suspension height of Miss Reed's Lexus at 5:07 a.m. on January 29th, 2022, while at One Meadows and colliding with the Chevy Traverse? What was the suspension height then?
We assumed it was the same as when it was at the Canton Police Department.
Exactly. You assumed, but there's no measurement like was just on that depiction. There was no note that said, okay, we're doing this very important and inches sensitive measurements to see whether the tail light on the Lexus makes contact with the Traverse but there's no measurement and no documentation of what the suspension height was at One Meadows, correct?
So we took the closest measurement in time to the Mun Meadows event, which is when it was at the Canton Police Department. That was the best information we had.
Well, that information isn't very good because the vehicle had to go from Canton to One Meadows. And when the vehicle drives the way the
He shouldn't have been allowed to testify as any bodily injury causation. He is not able to do this in civil court. He's been blocked before. I showed the court order that blocked him as a witness the last 2 nights. I did live streams. So he's gone way beyond what he could do in a civil case. He wasn't even allowed to testify at all in a civil case. And here he can make up all this stuff and be an expert in all engineering things and medical things. He's acting like a medical doctor, a medical examiner, a biomechanical engineer, and a biomedical engineer, all these things in one.
suspension system works, it's automatic. When you go above,
And then all he's got is that stupid 5th grader. A 5th grader could have done something better than that. Sorry, I'm insulting 5th grader science projects.
20 miles an hour, the suspension comes up. And when you turn off the vehicle, it goes down so you can get out easier. So it would be improper to assume that the suspension at One Meadows would be the same at another location.
That's the only, sorry,
Was there an objection? Yeah. Go ahead and answer, please.
that's the extent of the information we had. We had it when it was at the Canton Police Department.
That's-
We matched that height.
Sorry, Sergeant. I understand.
But actually, you brought up a good point. It's going so slow when it's backing up that it wouldn't raise up. So the static position when it's backing up would be the static position.
But it wouldn't be going in backup from the Canton Police Department to One Meadows. It wouldn't be going back up when it's going in other locations, sir, right? It would be driving forward. It had to get from point A to point B.
Right, but as you pointed out, when you turn it off, it drops down, and then you turn it on, and then once you go above 20, as you indicated, it goes up. But when she's backing up, she never goes more than a couple miles an hour. So it's going to be at the same position as when you start, which is approximately the same position when it's off at the Canton Police Department a couple days later.
I forgot he's trying to act like a lawyer too, except when it comes down to how much the contract was for and the specifics on payment. And then he says, "Well, I'm not a lawyer. I don't really know that kind of stuff." Yeah, right.
Do you know whether the suspension system locks when there is testing of the infotainment system?
Whether the suspensions, I don't know.
Okay, let's go on to the next topic. You're aware of the vehicle control, excuse me, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. I want to go, I'm changing topics to go back now to Fairview, 34 Fairview. You don't know what the suspension ride height at 34 Fairview was on January 29th of 2022, do you?
Correct.
So therefore, if you don't know what the suspension height was, because of course you weren't there.
I mean, he's doing a good job of trying to show how this vehicle could change its height, could go higher and lower. But even with all that, even if it lined up and couldn't go any higher or lower, there's no way just having a laceration above your eye. If you got hit going 24 miles an hour, you'd be smashing that part of your eye out. You wouldn't just have a laceration like it's a sharp, blunt object. That's like a smooth plastic component, and it might have burst the plastic. I'd say it's maybe even more breakable than the polycarb light. I'm not sure, but he didn't test that at all. Again, he just is cutting corners. He got the 325 plus 44,000. So he was able to cut corners, and he basically, I would say this was a big ripoff for the Commonwealth. That's all you got out of testing out of this guy's company.
On January 29, 2022, therefore there's no measuring stick, as you say, you assert that you would have accounted for it in your methodology. So you don't have the suspension height for that key day, do you, sir?
I only have it 2 days later.
All right.
Yeah, that's true. Also, tire pressure can adjust the height of the vehicle.
So when you talk about key measurements, such as the spoiler on the top of the Lexus and the inches that are important as to whether things such as, is there a contact with the front eye, you don't have some data that would be relevant to that calculation, the sum data being the suspension height of the Lexus at that time, do you?
So we have some data. We have photos of the vehicle 2 days later. We don't know the exact height outside because, as you alluded to, we don't have a measurement on January 29th of it, but we do have it 2 days later. That's the source of the measurement.
Yeah, we're going to have to listen to this guy some more after the defense presents their case.
Don't have the suspension height or the setting of the suspension of the Lexus that existed on January 29th, 2022, do you?
Correct.
Now let's go on to another topic. Within the 34 Fairview on January 29th of 2022, I'm not going to go over them, but you asserted various measurements, height, width, with regard to the Lexus, correct? It wasn't just for the spoiler at the top, correct?
Correct.
And for all those other measurements that you talked about, you did not have the suspension height and the suspension setting of the hydraulic system of the Lexus on January 29th, 2022, did you?
So the hydraulic's only going to affect the vertical dimensions. It doesn't change anything left to right. It doesn't change anything down the side of the car.
Understood. But for the measurements that are affected by vertical, you didn't have the suspension height of the Lexus system on January 29th, 2022.
Again, I only know what it is 2
That's
days
true
later.
as well.
So now let's go on to vehicle control history. Sir, you understand what I mean by vehicle control history?
This is text stream information.
Are you aware of what is called the Bosch crash data retrieval system in Lexus vehicles?
Of course, we showed it on my slides.
And the Bosch crash data retrieval system in Lexus vehicles is sometimes referred to as the black box.
No, you're mixing up two things. So the Bosch is like the tools.
It's a question, sir.
So you answer that with a yes or no?
So the Bosch
Crash data retrieval system in Lexus vehicles is sometimes referred to as the black box.
No, you're mixing up two things. So the Bosch is like the tools.
It's a question, sir.
Look at him.
Sometimes referred to as the black box.
No, you're mixing up two things. So the Bosch is like the tools.
It's a question, sir.
You know, he has to be condescending. You're mixing up two things. Why can't he just say, well, Bosch is a device used to test the Lexus equipment. It's not a part of the Lexus vehicle. But he has to be condescending about it. And look at his body language here. He's just really coming across bad here.
So you answer that with
Like,
a yes or no?
Judge, bail me out. Like, this guy's being so ridiculous. Come on, shut him down.
Is the Bosch crash data retrieval system the black box on Lexus vehicles? I just wanted to repeat it so we can.
Just say no.
You objected?
I'd like him to be able to finish his answers.
Yeah. So the question was just asked. Can you answer that question?
No, it doesn't make sense.
Okay, next question, Mr. Wilson.
I'm going to ask.
If you want to respond in such a snarky way, Brennan wouldn't have been there to cut him off. But Brennan, I'm surprised, didn't know this issue better, because he thought it was the Bosch system was in the Lexus, and it's not, apparently.
The question, sir. The Bosch crash data retrieval system in Lexus vehicles, you're familiar with that? Are you familiar?
Why did it stop? All right, it is not moving forward for some reason.
By Lexus
Here we go.
is a diagnostic tool for their technicians, Lexus technicians, to assist in vehicle repair and maintenance. Is that what that is created for?
That's their stated purpose.
Right. And is a synonym for VCH TechStream?
Sort of. TechStream, similar, like Bosch is the hardware and software to access the black box data. TechStream is the software to access, for example, the pre-collision system, the PCS system, and the VCH, which is the vehicle control history. So TechStream which does a lot of other stuff, but does access that information.
You just mentioned Bosch, didn't you, sir?
So Bosch is not in the Lexus. You use Bosch stuff sold by Bosch.
See how irritated he is with a lessee here? He's not coming across professional law. Is this really a guy that's a seasoned PhD accident reconstruction expert and biomechanical engineer? He's not coming across good at all. Look at that face.
Bosch software and hardware, and you walk up to the Lexus with all the Bosch stuff and plug it in and download the event data recorder, the EDR, the black box. That was my problem. There is no Bosch stuff in the Lexus.
You got that, stupid? I mean, that's the way you're coming across here.
I understand, sir. That was going to be the question that I was trying to get to, but you've explained it, so I don't have to answer the question. Let's go to the VCH database that you say the stated purpose.
Yes, you could do that. Normally, you don't use the same witness, but you could if you had to. If some new issue came up, you wanted to rebut it from somebody you had called previously, or even the other side is called previously, you could add them to your case in chief.
Purpose is to assist technicians at Lexus in vehicle repair and maintenance.
So I didn't say that was a stated purpose. I'm saying that's what Lexus or Toyota says is a stated purpose. It's being used in litigation all the time. All I know is that's what Lexus and Toyota says. But again, it came about right when we started seeing all the sudden accelerations in the Toyota vehicles.
So my question is the VCH database specific to Toyota and Lexus vehicles?
So it's not a database, it's software.
Is the software specific to Lexus and Toyota? The VCH?
Those particular acronyms are, yes.
Want to move to another topic, and we are almost finished. We have just two more topics, sir. How common were VCH events when Miss Reed owned the Lexus?
In 2022?
Do you know the ownership period of Miss Reed with respect to the Lexus? You know how long she owned it?
I have that documentation. I do it off the top of my head.
Do you have an approximate?
No, I mean, it was a 2021 vehicle. Our accident's January 29, 2022. But I did get that information.
Do you know how many VCH events were associated with the Lexus of Miss Reed?
I did not count them, no. I have them all.
Do you
I was
have-
only focused on the ones around our time period.
Exactly. But do you have the number of events? Do you know how many there were?
I could get it for you.
How long would it take, sir?
3 minutes?
Why don't we come back to it
Okay.
and we'll see if it's.
How about I start this so that we don't have to wait for it to boot up? And then when we come back to it, it's ready to go. You
As
okay with
long
that?
as you're, that's all you're looking at, sir.
Yep.
Thank you. And then pick your head up, please, so I can finish these two
Please,
topics.
go ahead.
So how often were VCH events recorded on the Lexus before January 29th of 2022?
Man, I have to pull this data up.
Fair
to-
enough, fair
to
enough.
answer that
I
question.
assume that's going to be in what you're also pulling up.
That's the goal here.
Would the number be about 15, 1-5? Does that sound right to you?
Let's see, 1, 2. There's 18.
18. So there were your records show that there were 18 VCH events recorded on Miss Reed's Lexus, correct?
Before the subject one.
Right. Did you conclude that any of those events, other than the 1162-2, were a collision?
No.
Now let's go to reverse recorded events. Can you tell how many of those 18 events were reverse recorded events? And you know what I mean by reverse recorded events? The
Yes.
vehicle going in reverse? How
Correct.
many of
Four.
those events were the vehicle going in reverse?
And this is before.
4. Other than
He asked
No,
you,
no,
is this
before.
before?
yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, I would have to pull up the PCS file.
Can you start that and I can continue on with the questioning?
I got to, so the PCS file is I have a second laptop that
Here's
has
what I'm going to
texturing.
do. That's not important for me to keep going and get through it.
Okay.
So let's just stay on the events, okay?
My live stream last night started out with the case, civil case, and the last hour the night before covered the case as well because I thought it was that important. I sort of ended the night 2 nights ago, and then last night I started it with the civil case. If you want to find it, Amanda.
Only one of all of those events, those 18, are you concluding that there was a collision associated with them, correct? Just one.
No, all those 18 are before. The collision's number 19.
No, I'm saying, I understand what you're saying, but for all the other events that are recorded, you're not, other than the January 29, 1162-2, you're not concluding that any of those were collisions, correct?
I didn't look at them. They were so far mileage away from everything.
But you're not concluding, even though they were so far away and you didn't look at them, you don't conclude from the information you have that any of them were a collision, correct?
Sustained.
Let's go to 5:07 a.m. on January 29th, 2022 at One Meadows, the home of Mr. O'Keefe.
Okay.
There was a collision between Ms. Reed's 6,000-pound Lexus and Mr. O'Keefe's approximately 4,500 Chevy Traverse. That's undisputed, correct? They collided, they made contact.
They touched.
Right. But the actual collision at One Meadows did not register the recording of an event on the Lexus VCH system, did it?
Why is his laptop
Too minor.
open?
So, however, you want this jury, sir, to conclude that the glancing blow that you contend occurred at 34 Fairview Road by the same 6,000-pound Lexus in contact with a mere 216-pound man did register an event on the Lexus, correct?
No, the impact didn't register the event. As I pointed out, the trigger was from when the accelerator pedal went to 30%. The tech stream does not register crashes at all. It registers excessive acceleration, excessive steering, excessive braking, things like that, things that would be part of the maintenance system. So the tech stream will never register an event, even if you hit a wall at 100 miles an hour necessarily. It'll cause fault codes and things like that. But that's not what it does. The trigger here was transitioning into reverse and then gunning the accelerator pedal in reverse. And so when it went from 30 up to 74% throttle, once it went over 30.
I just don't know why the defense didn't use that case where he was kept out of civil court from testifying, and now he's going and testifying in a murder case. It just makes no sense. I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
In that transition, that's what triggered the tech stream.
I would have at least impeached him on it or tried to.
It had nothing to do with, and that's why I'm telling you, I don't know when in that event the impact occurred, because the tech stream doesn't tell you that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Exactly my point. The tech stream information doesn't tell you when a collision occurs, does it?
Correct.
That's all the questions I have at this time, Your Honor.
All right, why don't we take our morning recess, James?
All right, then we have Brennan. We had a break here going to 2018 or 2 hours, 18 minutes. I'm not sure if I want to play Brennan
Some
here.
Actually,
questions.
it's morning, but yes.
You were asking questions about the ring video from
It's only
Meadows,
minutes.
which was John O'Keefe's home. And you were asked whether you're aware if the cameras had changed over time.
Correct.
The fact that the camera was replaced, does that any way affect your opinion to a reasonable degree?
I can't stand watching this guy. I can't stand listening to his voice. Let's just go beyond. He's not worth listening to. Let's go back to recross Alessi.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Wow. Anything,
This
Mr. Leslie?
redirect is only 6 minutes, which is not much for him normally. Maybe feedback's getting back to him that he's really blown it on redirect.
Yeah, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Welcher, you were just asked questions about slide 33, which is a slide about text stream data. You acknowledge that text stream data, what you have called a trigger, like was on that slide, does not tell you if a collision even occurred, correct?
Correct.
With regard to the topic of confirmation bias that you were just asked about in slide 33, am I correct that all of the questions that Attorney Brennan just asked you were about data on that slide, correct? All that's on that slide is data, correct?
How do you ask me more questions than just this slide?
But were the questions just about data?
On this slide, it was just about data.
Correct. But confirmation bias is really aimed at opinions and conclusions and alternative hypotheses. Isn't that what confirmation bias gets at?
So generally, yes. Again, I started this case
It
with
was
the
just a question.
hypothesis,
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
with the hypothesis that the Lexus didn't contact Mr. O'Keefe. And so I start what's called the null hypothesis, that this didn't happen. And then I look at evidence to either include or exclude
Oh,
the null hypothesis. So theoretically, my confirmational bias starts with a bias that it didn't happen.
Oh, really? Then you considered every other theory about how John's injuries happened, such as a dog, about how the marks on his arm were all in the same direction, and that wouldn't happen if your arm was bent at the elbow, like you were trying to do when you're dressed as the Blue Man.
Can you point to one document that shows that you analyzed whether there was no contact between the Lexus and Mr. O'Keefe? Can you point to one document? There's there one document on your slide presentation, for example, that analyzed the null hypothesis, as you call it, there being no contact at all? Was there any slides in your direct testimony?
So remember what I said, we start with hypothesis, we get
Should be allowed on a criminal case, absolutely, but not in this court.
more data, we whittle down our hypothesis to the final answer. I mean, I had 130 slides. I suspect I bored some of these people to death already. So I didn't include everything. There's thousands of photographs in here. There was a bunch of testing I did with the Lexus about backing, pedestrian detection that, removed certain.
The whacked out methodologies of Jessica Hyde and this guy, yeah, the judge didn't let that come in on Jessica Hyde. So if defense would have asked for it here, probably wouldn't have kept out as well. But it's definitely something that is some point that should be reversible error. But they have so many reversible errors. But anyway,
hypotheses. So if I was able to eliminate a hypothesis, I didn't present it here.
Sir, my question is not about.
All the slides show that, to answer your question.
Sir, my question is there any
that's
slide
true.
that says alternative hypothesis to whatever the label is, whatever the term, it says no contact between the Lexus vehicle and Mr. O'Keefe? Is there any document that you presented to the jury that shows that?
Any document where those words are written on it?
Correct.
No.
See,
And
he doesn't talk about other things he looked at. All he did is said, "This is what happened." No other explanation. Yet there's so many huge gaping holes in what he's trying to say happened. It's just absolute. I wouldn't even call it speculation. It's more like, hey, this is what we need an expert for. So can you testify to these things? Yes, I can. All right, we'll fly you up here and pay you $400,000.
to work through hypotheses, different ones, in confirmation, and to see whether there's confirmation bias.
If there was real tests, genuine tests, like we saw on YouTube with this Been Trouble 31 guy, that's the kind of things you would expect from a engineer, not this crazy 2-mile-an-hour test that has absolutely no degree of detail whatsoever.
Have you heard of scientists refer that as showing your math, so to speak, in working through hypotheses, documenting each hypothesis and how and why you rejected them? Have you heard of that term in the scientific world, show your math with confirmation biases and alternative hypotheses? Just a question. Have you heard the idiom, the phrase, show your math?
Your question is, have I ever heard show your math, period?
Associated with the application of various hypotheses to avoid confirmation bias. Have you heard of that term used in that conjunction?
Not really in that
Okay.
context. It's probably, I understand where you're going with it.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
No further questions.
Dr. Welcher, you were all set.
Oh my God, thank you.
Look at that.
Give me a minute to pack up and I will be out of here.
Wow. Doesn't have a proper reverence for the court.
Oh, I am plugged in. Yes, thank you.
Does he look like he's taking this case serious, that someone's life is on the line? I don't think so.
Excuse me? Yes, you can read it.
Thank you.
I'm just looking through some questions now. So there's one more slide here. Excuse me, a video from the ID docuseries.
Commonwealth moves to introduce and play clip 26.
This is it. This is the last thing, and he rests.
run him over? Did he try to get me as I was leaving and I didn't know it? I mean, I've always got the music blasting. It's snowing. I got the wipers going, the heater blasting. Did he come and hit the back of my car and I hit him in the knee and he's drunk and passed out and asphyxiated or something? And then when I hired David Yannetti, I asked him those questions the night of January 29th. Like, David, what if, I don't know, what if I ran his foot over? Or what if I clipped him in the knee and he passed out or went to care for himself and he threw up or passed out? And David said, yeah, then you have some element of culpability.
All right, so let's back that up. So here,
What if I ran his foot over? Or what if
I don't know why she would be on this docuseries, and this is done after her acquittal. So talking about what you said to your attorney, and you wonder if you may have some culpability. I mean, it sounds like it is how she's really thinking and processing this, and she's still blaming herself. Could I have done something? How did this happen? And keep in mind, they're not showing the other part of the story, which is they were saying on the news station that there's been reports that this whole thing was filmed by a Ring camera or something along the same lines. So you would be thinking the same thing. So I think it's really a nothing comment to make. But in Hank Brennan's mind, he's trying to get everything he can to throw against the wall, and hopefully somebody will look at this and say, "Oh, see, she's confessing." It's not a confession. She's just talking about what she's processing in her mind, and she's blaming herself like anyone would do in that situation. So I think it's really a sign of real weakness that he's having to do all these videos of her making these statements.
I clipped him in the knee and he passed out or went to care for himself and he threw up or passed out? And David said, yeah, then you have some element of.
And keep in mind, she said that she saw him go towards a house, and even she said, while this trial's been ongoing, she made a statement that she said she actually saw him go in the house. So she's thinking, well, if he got hurt outside the car, maybe she didn't see him come back to the car and she took off or something. And like she's saying, her music's really loud, the wiper's going, the heater's on full blast. So that's something you try to replay in your mind if that's the information you were receiving at the time. I think it just shows she's really brutally honest, even including things where she's questioning herself. She's not trying to put the blame game on somebody else. Robert Hickey, yeah, you're spot on about the pro-Commonwealth supporters resorting to insults and not facts when discussing this case. That's all they got. They are just vile, nasty people for the most part. They can't even have an intellectual discussion. It's all just personal, profane, vile stuff they throw at you. Not every single one, obviously, but they are very much vocal. Good, Natalie. You're wondering if I'd call Trooper Paul. I think because they don't have the different theories, how the Commonwealth has changed their theories all the time, and Trooper Paul is saying that he got launched 30 feet and all that. It may just show how stupid all these people for the Commonwealth are. So I probably would be leaning towards doing that, but I'd have to war game it with other counsel and decide. But I'd definitely consider that. I'm leaning towards doing that. I mean, it sort of goes against the grain of what you normally do. You don't really want to have it call a cop that was involved in this case, but when you got Trooper Paul and you can't bring up the fact that they now changed their theory and the information on it, it's basically Trooper Paul. Keep in mind, it was all garbage in, garbage out. He wasn't there to show up at the scene in time. He didn't know where any of the stuff was. He didn't find virtually any of the stuff that they kept on finding in the days and weeks after the incident. Here's their first witness. So he has a master's and he also has a professional engineer license, which is a super complex license to
event data recorders. And he is joined by Matt DeSogra, who, from what I understand, is the student that is becoming the master. And Matt has been an engineer with Delta V since 2013, where he specializes in recovery and analysis of data from damaged EDRs and has authored several related SAE papers. In addition, Matt co-instructs the aforementioned SAE seminar with Tim. Matt is also a member of the SAE J2728 Heavy Vehicle Event Data Recorder Subcommittee of the Truck and Bus Council. He received his bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering from the University of North Carolina and is also a licensed professional engineer. So that should help you understand why we're interviewing these gentlemen today, because they are the elite. They are the teachers of the industry. So thank you guys for taking the time, making the time is probably the better way to say it, to join in today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
So I wanted to start a little bit and talk about the way that I understand Delta V from across the country is you guys are a very high-end reconstruction firm specializing in heavy vehicles and heavy vehicle event data recorders, retrieval of that information and interpretation of that information. Correct me if I'm wrong on that front, but if not, could you guys outline just real quickly each of your roles there and what you're doing kind of on the day-to-day level?
Sure, I'll go first. So I oversee the group in Delta V that handles basically all things EDR, specialty EDR. So that's on-site imaging of vehicles, that's benchtop downloads from modules from vehicles, and then that's all the way through the data recovery of damaged modules. So we kind of handle all facets of that aspect of things. And so we support our own engineers internally with that service, and then we also provide that externally to clients across the country who need that level of depth on their cases.
Yeah, and I'd say I was Matt before there was a Matt. And then when Matt came along and he decided he wanted to fly on airplanes a lot, said, Matt, here you go. So actually what I do day to day now is I'm focused on casework, where a lot of product liability work from my time with a truck manufacturer, work on various aspects of from steering to braking to could be fires, things like that. Still involved in EDR. Can't get away from that. Certainly in my day-to-day work, I have to use it. But that's what my focus is right now. It's not totally EDR.
Yeah, and we were talking about it a little bit before recording, and we'll go into it certainly in more depth, but it seems like something you have to throw your whole self at. And if you're not doing that, then you need somebody like Matt to kind of back you up. I think we all need somebody like Matt in the community that we can lean on a little bit. So yeah, we're going to be talking obviously a lot about HV EDRs, and the majority of the people who are listening will know what that is. But for those that might be outside the industry listening, the HV is heavy vehicle and the EDR is event data recorder. So I guess let's just first start out with, what is a heavy vehicle in this context? How do you categorize that?
Yeah, I'd say a heavy vehicle, I guess if you were to classify it, they talk about light duty vehicles are 8,500 pounds and less. So when you look at Part 563, that's what they apply to, under 8,500 pounds. Heavy vehicles, typically we're looking at the other way they classify it would be classes. So there's class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're looking typically.
I'd probably call as a witness first the snowplow driver, Lucky, and also bring out that he brings out such critical details about not seeing anybody laying there, and also about the forward edge. That is such a big thing, and he's such a likable guy. I'd probably start out with him, but they're starting out with this guy, and I'm sure ARCA is going to be following this guy. I think we might have heard that today as well.
Be at class 6 through class 8 when we're talking about heavy vehicles. So 6 would be medium duty trucks, 7 and 8 would be getting into heavy duty trucks.
Okay. And then the EDR part, event data recorder, they're talking about heavy duty vehicles like semis. So they're not talking about cars here, but you get a flavor. Description, the name of it tells us most of that. But Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about what the E is, like the event? how are those modules trying to determine whether or not a quote unquote event occurred?
Yeah, it's a lot less well defined than the situation is in the passenger vehicle world, where you have something like Part 563 that lays a foundation for what those things are, how they're supposed to work, and nothing like that exists in the heavy vehicle realm. The closest we get is an SAE recommended practice, J2728, which lays that out, but there's no requirement for manufacturers to abide by that. So it's all voluntary. And furthermore, every manufacturer is free to implement the recorder as they please. So events can be things like a trigger based on a wheel speed change. They could be things like a trigger based on a fault condition. They could be a trigger based on, let's say, a forward collision warning if the vehicle has radar. The field of possibilities is pretty vast when it comes to what is the event in question, since there is no set of regulatory definitions for it.
And are these
This guy's really sharp. If he's got a PE, he's super smart. I think that's one of the toughest exams certifications you can get of any kind of professional skill set. And so I think he's going to come across very well. He's going to be relatable to these younger jurors. So I think it's a good find for the defense. All right, let's go to, I'm going to show something else now. We're going to go to his firm's website here. So this is Delta V. This kind of services they have. Accident reconstruction, biomechanics, event data recorders for passenger and heavy vehicle, data recovery. They've been around since 2004. So we go to clients. So they do insurance. They do heavy equipment stuff as well. They don't go to the actual clients that they have represented. Legal proceedings. And let's go to overview. So they do solely motor vehicle forensic engineering. They also talk about bringing top experts in the motor vehicle forensic division. Their main corporate office is in Charlotte, North Carolina, but they also have locations in Atlanta, Nashville, Denver, and Fayetteville. That'd be Fayetteville, Arkansas. So let's go to event data recorders. They say their experience is unmatched. I'm not going to get into that now, but let's see. Event data recorders. I saw the trying to find this guy's. Oh, here's our team. So you can see here PE, MS, and PE. Like say PE, folks. That is one tough exam to pass. They have multiple ones here. Fayetteville, Arkansas. Here's the EDR lab. He's a director of engineering at the EDR lab. So he's been around for over a decade. So this is a Society for Accident Engineers, something like that, I think is what SAE stands for. So from North Carolina, he has his PE license. So it doesn't say his schooling for that, but if he's, like I say, if he's got his PE, that's as good as gold. All right, with that, I'm going to go back and yeah, it's just, I think based on the time it's getting so late here, I'm just going to go ahead and wind up for now and come back again. I'm not sure what night I'll be back on, but Sunday evening, I think, is the next time I'm going to be on. So I won't be covering tomorrow's case at all, but we'll be back on Sunday late afternoon or sometime in the evening. So we do have trial tomorrow. The lawyers are going to start off. I think the trial's not starting until 9:30, but we have defense first witness. So we'll see this guy tomorrow, and we'll probably see ARCA after that. Richie Blackmore, you're saying the spoiler is pretty hard. If it struck John O'Keefe above the eye, he would have a skull fracture to his forehead. Yeah, I think that's if you're saying it's harder than the polycarb lens, and it might be, I'm just not sure, but he didn't talk about any of that. Those kind of details. They didn't do any testing to see the amount of force, or how would you even get a laceration from something that would really, if you just get a laceration but it doesn't break your bone or fracture your bone, your skull, this doesn't make any sense. Monkey Boy Brand, so how did the taillight explode according to the prosecution? Yeah, we don't know. There's been no demonstration of that. You're saying, well, yeah, we know how to explode with a Proctor with a hammer. Yeah, Michael Peppertech, Alessi's advantage, he knows science because he defends companies of all the science all the time. Brendan doesn't know any of what is being talked about. Yeah, A. Hargrove, those taillight photos look fake from online. Can't imagine how crazy it looks in person. You're talking about being in the courtroom there. Yep. Burgess and Welsher, they don't have the PE. All right, you guys got a lot of good points, a lot of good questions. PE, that's here, why don't I just Google it? A friend of mine, he finished #1 in engineering, mining engineering, and he was studying for to get his PE. So hold on a second. I'll just pull that up here. So a professional engineer, PE, is an individual who has met the educational experience and exam requirements set by their state's Board of Licensure and is legally authorized to offer engineering service to the public. That means they can design, supervise construction, and provide other engineering services, ensuring adherence to standards and protecting the public. So somebody like him is actually licensed by the state to do engineering, whereas like what we had from Aperture, they don't have any licensing for theirs. They have degrees, well, at least Welcher does, degrees in engineering, but it doesn't, there's no state licensing for that. So PEs, they have to pass their own state board, sort of like a lawyer or a doctor would. And it's a really tough exam. So it's basically something that you're tested not just in one area. So if you want to pass this test, you have to understand not only, for example, construction engineering, mechanical engineering, industrial engineering. You have to know geoengineering. You have to know electrical engineering. There's all these different types of engineering, and you get tests on all of it. So you just can't be a specialist in one type of engineering. It sort of shows that you have a broad-based skill set in all the very complex details and nuances of engineering. So you have two different exams you got to pass. Pass the fundamentals engineering exam and also pass the principles and practice engineering exam. So if you're like going to have somebody build a overpass on an interstate, you're going to have a PE. You can't be like somebody like Welcher. Yeah, it's just very tough. So anyway, back to my friend. I first heard about it because he was studying for it, and he told me about what a high how much esteem that has in the engineering field, and that it's a very tough test to take, a very tough exam, and he had not passed it. So anyway. So you buffs are in. Your husband has a degree in master engineering as well as his PE. Yeah, no, it's not physical education, but yeah, there it is. Society of Automotive Engineers. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. So you all have a good one. Have a great weekend. I hope to be back on Sunday. We'll go from there. Thanks. Take care.